The lights from the parlor and kitchen shone out through the blinds and the windows and bars, and high overhead and all moving about, there were thousands of millions of stars. There ne'er were such thousands of leaves on a tree, nor of people in church or the park, as the crowds of the stars that looked down upon me and that glittered and winked in the dark. The dog and the plow and the hunter and all, and the star of the sailor and Mars, these shone in the sky, and the pail by the wall would be half full of water and stars. They saw me at last, and they chased me with cries, and they soon had me packed into bed. But the glory kept shining and bright in my eyes, and the stars going round in my head.
Wow, that was beautiful, Sarah. Did you write that poem?
No, that was Robert Louis Stevenson.
Wow, from his Child's Garden of Verses?
Yes, exactly.
What a coincidence. We're going to talk about Robert Louis Stevenson and the Child's Garden of Verses right here on the Two Cat Kitchen, coming up next.
Two Cat Kitchen, it's time for us to pitch in and start another Two Cat show. Down at the Two Cat Kitchen, we're starting on a mission to put you in the culinary know. We've got the finest recipes you ever will find, guaranteed to show you all a mighty fine time here at the Two Cat Kitchen. Time for a new edition of the Culinary Two Cat Show. The Culinary Two Cat Show.
Welcome to the Two Cat Kitchen, the show that mixes musical mayhem with culinary calamity. Sarah Grady is here to help with the mixing.
Hello, everybody.
David Lucan is also here to help with the mixing.
Spoon at the ready.
All right, we have a special episode for you tonight. We are going to feature a new album release. It's called A Child's Garden of Song, Volume 2. And it's an album that takes a look at some of the poems of Robert Louis Stevenson that he published in his work, A Child's Garden of Verses. The poems are actually set to music, set to folk music. And some of us here at the Two Cat Kitchen have taken part in this recording, including Sarah.
Yes.
Yes, Sarah sings on some of the songs. And David, you play on some of the songs.
Yes.
Yes, and so we're here to tell you about this great CD. Hope we'll have some songs from it. And we'll also learn a little bit more about the life of Robert Louis Stevenson. We're going to start things right off with a song called Picture Books, which, Sarah, you sang.
Yep.
And this is one that, a lot of the poems in the Child's Garden of Verses were written by Robert Louis Stevenson, who himself was a kind of a sickly child, so he was like kind of laid up in bed a lot. And a lot of the songs, a lot of the poems, that is, what he would do to entertain himself while he was spending his time kind of recuperating from whatever illness he had. And I think this is probably one of those songs where he talks about the different picture books that he would read and kind of make up his own worlds, I think, about the... what do you think, Sarah? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, a lot of them were about either books that inspired his imagination or the creative things he would do with his toys, or a child might do with their toys, or the view out the window, things that you might see, like the garden.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to hear about that. And then at the end of this song, we have an instrumental number, and it's played by a band called Alpaca Lunch, which, David, you're a part of. Great that you guys would be willing to play on this, and it's a great song, John Brown's Dream. Do you know anything about that song in general? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I don't know much, but I guess John Brown was an abolitionist figure, and so it's around the Civil War, and the lyrics, as such as they are John Brown's dream, the devil is dead.
Wow. Gotta love that. All right, well, let's check it out. Picture Books and John Brown's Dream, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
Frosty morning, tingling thumbs, window robins, winter rooks, and the picture storybooks. Water now is turned to stone, nerves that I can't walk upon. Still we find the flowing brooks in the picture storybooks. All the pretty things put by wait upon the children's eye. Sheep and shepherds, trees and crooks in the picture storybooks. We may see how all things are, seas and cities near and far, and the flying fairies looks in the picture storybooks. How am I to sing your praise? Happy chimney corner days, sitting safe in nursery nooks, reading picture storybooks.
We're here with Chi Chi Pekingese to talk about the new release, A Child's Garden of Song, Volume 2, Folk Music Settings of Children's Poems. Chi Chi, we'd like to learn more about the life and times of Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of the poems featured on the CD. We realize Stevenson is not a musical figure, but we're hoping you can help us learn more about his life and times.
You bet! I just happen to be a big fan of his.
Wow, that's really fortunate. Tell us, Where and when did Robert Louis Stevenson live?
He lived in the later half of the 19th century, from 1850 to 1894. He was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, and traveled quite a bit throughout his relatively short life. He was an only child, and interestingly, his father came from a long line of lighthouse designers.
Lighthouse designers. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yes. Building lighthouses requires many different techniques to match the environments they need to stand up to. Some are built on rock cribs in the middle of the water, others on rocky outcroppings or sandy bluffs. Each of these require different design consideration and construction techniques. Stevenson's father was active in the British Isles and would often travel to new or existing lighthouse locations to help create his designs. Since Robert was expected to carry on the family profession, he accompanied his father from a young age. It was during these trips that he was said to develop his love of travel and experiencing new places, all of which helped inspire his literary works.
I'm guessing that Robert Louis Stevenson didn't necessarily want to follow in his father's footsteps, though.
No. After a relatively conventional childhood and education, he began moving away from his upbringing in his early 20s. He favored the bohemian look, wore his hair long, and liked to visit cheap pubs and brothels. More significantly for his relationship with his family, he came to reject Christianity and declared himself an atheist.
I bet that didn't go over too well.
His parents devastated. He did come back to embrace religion somewhat in his later years, even teaching Sunday school during his final years while living in Samoa, where he also wrote and led prayers that were published posthumously.
So when did his writing career start to take off?
When he was in his mid-20s, Stevenson met Frances Jane Sitwell, who became his informal literary advisor and introduced him to the London literary scene. He became then acquainted with many of the writers of the time, including Andrew Lang, Edmund Gosse, and Leslie Stephen, who took an interest in Stevenson's work. It was Stephen who took Stevenson to visit a patient at the Edinburgh infirmary named William Ernest Henley, an outgoing poet with a wooden leg who is thought to be the inspiration for Long John Silver in Treasure Island.
Interesting. Was he still traveling at the time?
Stevenson was sickly as a child, and his ailments continued into adulthood. He suffered from a tendency to coughs and fevers, and at one point he was sent to the French Riviera in 1873 to recuperate. He returned to France several times after that, traveling to Paris and staying at Barbizon and Nemours and becoming a member of the artist colonies there.
How about his studies at the time?
He studied law at university and ultimately qualified for the Scottish bar. But while his law studies did influence his books, he never practiced law, and all his energies were spent in travel and writing. For example, in the later 1870s, he embarked on a canoe voyage in Belgium and France, which became the basis of his first travel book, An Island Voyage. This was the beginning of his career as a novelist, poet, and travel writer.
Oh, so he was an early example of a travel writer.
Oh, no, travel writing is a genre that's been around for many years. Many consider the Greek author Herodotus to be the first real travel writer. He traveled all over the eastern Mediterranean to research his monumental histories, written between 450 and 420 BC. His writings serve as a record of the ancient traditions, politics, geography, and clashes of various cultures that were known in Greece, Western Asia, and Northern Africa at the time.
Oops, my mistake. Sounds like it must have been an established genre by the time Stevenson came along.
Travel was a necessity back in the day, and most travel stories were intended to inform about the different nature and culture of inhabitants the writers met. Another well-known travel writer was Marco Polo from Italy, who wrote in 1298 about a Venetian traveler on his way to China and the Mongol Empire in the work Il Milione. His work is considered a truthful depiction of travel at that time, complemented with information he collected through hearsay. Contemporaries of Stevenson, who were known as travel writers at some point in their careers, included Charles Darwin, Hans Christian Andersen, Charles Dickens, and Mark Twain.
Wow, quite a lineup. You know, I heard that at some point Stevenson lived in the United States.
At the time of the aforementioned canoe voyage, he met Fanny Van de Grift Osborne, a short story writer originally from Indianapolis in the U.S. She had married Samuel Osborne at the age of 17, and they had had 3 children. Anger over her husband's infidelities eventually led to their separation, and in 1875 she took her children to France, where she met Stevenson. They met again several years later and became lovers, and Stevenson spent much of the following year with her and her children in France. In August 1878, Fanny traveled to San Francisco. Stevenson set off to join her in August 1879. He booked a second-class passage on a steamship, in part to learn how others traveled and to increase the adventure of the story. The experience he gained was beneficial for his writing, but detrimental to his health.
So often the case.
I don't think so. But anyway, they married in San Francisco in 1880, and soon after they returned to the UK, where they shuttled back and forth between Scotland and the continent before settling in Westbourne in the English south coast town of Bournemouth. The move allowed Stevenson to benefit from its sea air.
I always wondered whether there was an actual benefit to be gained from sea air. Maybe it's all the salt.
From 1884 to 1886, the couple resided in Bournemouth. Largely bedridden, Stevenson described himself as living like a weevil in a biscuit. Yet, despite the ill health, during his 3 years in Bournemouth, he wrote the bulk of his most popular work, including Treasure Island, Kidnapped, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which established his wider reputation, A Child's Garden of Verses, and New Arabian Nights.
He really is one of the most popular and revered writers in the history of the English language, and despite his ill health, was very prolific as a writer.
Stevenson likened himself to Sir Walter Scott, a storyteller with an ability to transport his readers away from themselves and their circumstances.
Seems like a pretty remarkable person, too.
Yes. For example, in 1889, Stevenson visited a leper colony on Molokai, Hawaii, where girls were cared for by the Sisters of St. Francis. While there, he brought a croquet set and taught the girls to play croquet. He spent a week there, and after his departure, he had a piano shipped to them from Honolulu.
Was that while he was on his way to Samoa?
Yes. Eventually, they arrived at the port of Apia in the Samoan Islands, and there he and Fanny decided to settle. Fanny's sister, Nellie Van de Grift Sanchez, wrote that it was in Samoa that the word home first began to have a real meaning for these wanderers. Stevenson took the native name Tutsitalia, Samoan for teller of tales, and he began collecting local stories. He immersed himself in the island's culture, which brought about a political awakening of sorts and put him philosophically at odds with the great powers whose warships were common sights in Samoan harbors. Stevenson understood that an indigenous clan society would be unprepared for the arrival of foreigners who preyed upon its existing rivalries and divisions.
Seems like he was also a bit ahead of his time with that type of sentiment.
His later writings also adopted a more political tone, and he became a reporter and an agitator, writing letters to the editor which told the tale of European and American misconduct in the region. Amidst a flurry of activity and writing, he died suddenly in 1894, possibly of a brain hemorrhage. After his death, the Samoans insisted on surrounding his body with a watch guard during the night and on bearing him on their shoulders to nearby Mount Vea, where he was buried on a spot overlooking the sea. Stevenson was loved by the Samoans, and his tombstone epitaph was translated to a Samoan song of grief.
Truly an inspirational author and individual. Thank you, Chi Chi, for helping us to better understand Robert Louis Stevenson. Next up, we're going to hear another song from the album, The Sun's Travels. And how would you describe the words to this song?
Well, it's a child thinking about how when the sun is up for them, when it's daytime, that there are other parts of the world where it's nighttime, and vice versa. So when it's dark and they're going to bed, that somewhere in the world there are children playing in the sunshine.
Yeah, that must be, for a very young child, I would think that's kind of a tough concept to think about. And this song also features our friends Nikki and Gosana on violin and cello. So it's a great example of their playing, which is beautiful. We're going to hear it now. The Sun's Travels, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
The sun is not abed when I at night upon my pillow lie. Still round the earth his way he takes, and morning after morning makes. While here at home in shining day, we round the sunny garden play. Each little darling sleepy head is being kissed and put to bed. And when at eve I rise from tea, day dawns beyond the Atlantic Sea, and all the children in the West are getting up and being dressed.
We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and it's time for a Robert Louis Stevenson quiz. This is the part of the program where we hear some excerpts from Robert Louis Stevenson novels, and then we try to guess which novels they're actually from. It's like a little bit of a quiz, and you folks at home can play along with us. Me and Sarah are going to try to figure out which Robert Louis Stevenson novel a certain excerpt comes from, and David will read us the excerpts. So that's how it's going to work. Now, before we get into this quiz, we need to get up to speed on the Robert Louis Stevenson novels. And the four novels that we're going to hear from, the excerpts from, are Treasure Island, The Strange Story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Kidnapped, and New Arabian Nights. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but it's been a while since I've read those novels.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever read them. I was supposed to read them at one point. So what we've done is we've had our new AI assistant here at the Two Cat Kitchen, and her name is Pauline. She put together brief excerpts, synopses of these Robert Louis Stevenson novels. And we're going to read those first so that we can get up to speed, and then you folks at home can as well. So here we go. I'm going to start off with a synopsis of Robert Louis Stevenson's classic adventure novel, Treasure Island. And this novel follows the coming-of-age journey of a young kid who discovers a map supposedly leading to buried treasure. He somehow manages to get a ship to take him to the treasure, but soon realizes that the crew is dominated by mutinous pirates led by the infamous Long John Silver, who later went on to found a fast food chain featuring fried seafood. They all end up on an island where the kid has to navigate the moral ambiguities of the pirate world, the dangers of the wilderness, and his own evolving courage, although not necessarily in that order. Treasure Island.
Okay.
Next up, we have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There you go,
All right. So, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde follows a lawyer as he investigates the alarming connection between his respectable doctor friend and a homicidal maniac. Through a series of dark events and a final posthumous confession, it is revealed that the nutjob doctor created some sort of chemical serum that physically transformed him into the maniac. Why he would do this is not clear, but suffice to say, it did not end well for either character.
Okay, I think I remember that one.
Yeah, this guy had quite the imagination.
Yeah. All right, so next up, David, you're going to give us a quick synopsis of Kidnapped.
Set against the backdrop of the 18th century Jacobite risings, Kidnapped follows the perilous journey of a young orphan who discovers he's the rightful heir to a fancy estate. True to the genre, his scheming uncle, of course, attempts to have him murdered and subsequently arranges for him to be kidnapped and sold into servitude, where he ends up on a ship that strikes a reef. He then joins forces with the Jacobite rebel, and they flee across the rugged Scottish Highlands to escape the Redcoats, whoever they are, following the infamous Appin murder, whatever that was. The kid eventually grows up and gets his inheritance, but not before he undergoes a series of trials and tribulations.
Ah, classic story. All right, and the last novel is The New Arabian Nights, which is a little bit of an obscure Stevenson novel, but it also marks a stylistic departure from Stevenson's later adventure classics, and it offers a series of interconnected, darkly comedic tales that blend Victorian urban realism with the whimsical structure of Middle Eastern folk narratives.
Nice.
Basically, it's a reboot of the old Arabian Nights, although Stevenson also explores themes of chance, morality, and the absurdity of the aristocratic class. Okay, so there you go. Those are our 4 synopses. And now we're going to get into the quiz, and we'll see how we do, and we'll see how the listeners at home do and stack up against us. All right, are you ready, Sarah?
I'm ready.
All right, David, fire away. With the first excerpt, we'll try to figure out the novel.
I had never seen the squire so near at hand. He was a tall man, over 6 feet high and broad in proportion, and he had a bluff, rough and ready face, all roughened and reddened and lined in his long travels. His eyebrows were very black and moved readily, and this gave him a look of some temper, not bad, you would say, but quick and high. "Come in, Mr. Dance," says he, very stately and condescending. "Good evening, Dance," says the doctor with a nod, "and good evening to you, friend Jim. What good wind brings you here?" The supervisor stood up straight and stiff and told his story like a lesson, and you should have seen how the 2 gentlemen leaned forward and looked at each other and forgot to smoke in their surprise and interest. When they heard how my mother went back to the inn, Dr. Livesey fairly slapped his thigh, and the squire cried, "Bravo!" and broke his long pipe against the grate. Long before it was done, Mr. Trelawney, that you will remember was the squire's name, had got up from his seat and was striding about the room, and the doctor, as if to hear the better, had taken off his powdered wig and sat there looking very strange indeed, with his own close-cropped black poll. At last Mr. Dance finished the story. "Mr. Dance," said the squire, "you are a very noble fellow, and as for riding down that black, atrocious miscreant, I regard it as an act of virtue, sir, like stamping on a cockroach. This lad Hawkins is a trump, I perceive. Hawkins, will you ring that bell? Mr. Dance must have some ale." "And so, Jim," said the doctor, "you have the thing that they were after, have you?" "Here it is, sir," said I, and gave him the oilskin packet. The doctor looked it all over, as if his fingers were itching to open it, but instead of doing that, he put it quietly in the pocket of his coat. "Squire," said he, "when Dance has had his ale, he must of course be off on his Majesty's service. But I mean to keep Jim Hawkins here to sleep at my house, and with your permission, I propose we should have up the cold pie and let him sup." "As you will, Livesey," said the squire. "Hawkins has earned better than cold pie." So a big pigeon pie was brought in and put on a side table, and I made a hearty supper, for I was as hungry as a hawk, while Mr. Dance was further complimented and at last dismissed. "And now, squire," said the doctor. "And now, Livesey," said the squire in the same breath. One at a time," laughed Dr. Livesey. "You have heard of this Flint, I suppose?"
Okay.
Is that it?
That's the excerpt, yeah.
All right.
Well,
I think it's
what do you think,
obvious.
Sarah? I mean, it has a doctor in it.
It does, but the doctor is not Dr. Jekyll.
How do you know?
It's Dr. Livesey.
Oh, it said that. I
Yeah.
missed that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's paying attention.
Yeah. So, all right. So
There was a little bit of wind in there, too.
there was wind. There's
It's a
wind on the
sail.
Scottish Highlands,
Oh.
potentially, and Squire
Wasn't that-
talk, maybe.
Was that the, wasn't there a Scottish, that some kid got kidnapped in the Scottish?
That was the kidnapped one.
You think that might be it?
It could. The tough thing about the Arabian Nights one is it would be stories. It's like a bunch of stories, presumably, right? So
Yeah, it could be anything.
could be anything. So,
Right, this is
but I
difficult.
think I'm leaning towards kidnapped. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the Dr. Livesey rings a bell with me, but I
Yeah,
can't put
yeah.
where it comes from. And so, all right. David, we're gonna go with kidnap. Oh, so can
Go
you?
with kidnap.
Here's the answer. You can.
Yeah, that would help. All right, and
Oh no!
Treasure Island.
You're kidding.
Wow! Oh, it's been
okay.
so long since I read that book.
That was
That was.
tough. It
Wow, that was a tough one.
That's
very
like a weird excerpt.
obscure.
Yeah.
Well, Pauline again is selecting the excerpts for us.
Well, maybe you'll have better luck with the.
Okay,
All right, let's-
number 2.
let's
Here we
try.
go. Number
All
2.
right, number 2. "Silas," he said, seating himself at the table, "the time has now come for me to explain my plan for your salvation. Tomorrow morning, at an early hour, Prince Florizel of Bohemia returns to London after having diverted himself for a few days with the Parisian Carnival. It was my fortune, a good while ago, to do Colonel Geraldine, his master of the horse, one of those services so common in my profession, which are never forgotten upon either side. I have no need to explain to you the nature of the obligation under which he was laid. Suffice it to say that I knew him ready to serve me in any practicable manner. Now, it was necessary for you to gain London with your trunk unopened. To this the custom house seemed to oppose a fatal difficulty, but I bethought me that the baggage of so considerable a person as the prince is, as a matter of courtesy, passed without examination by the officers of custom. I applied to Colonel Geraldine, and succeeded in obtaining a favorable answer. Tomorrow, if you go before 6 to the hotel where the prince lodges, your baggage will be passed over as a part of his, and you yourself will make the journey as a member of his suite. It seems to me, as you speak," this is someone else talking, "that I have already seen both the prince and Colonel Geraldine. I even overheard some of their conversation the other evening at the Boulier ball." What do you think?
Oh,
This is a doctor again.
There is a doctor again. When it first started out, I was thinking it was like with the princes and the balls and everything. I thought maybe it was an Arabian Nights.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking
Yeah.
too. it doesn't really fit.
Sounds a little fantastical.
It doesn't really fit the other,
Yeah.
the Treasure Island necessarily. I don't think there was a prince in that, was there?
No.
And the Kidnap, maybe not. And then the Dr. Jekyll. I think you think Arabian Nights.
Yeah.
All right, David, we're going with Arabian Nights. What do you got?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yay! Okay.
we
good.
got it.
Yeah.
Wow. I
One
would
for
not
two.
have got that right. These are tough.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Great.
So
So you're 1-1, guys.
okay, so let's do another one.
All right.
Number 3.
Mr. Utterson's only answer was to rise and get his hat and greatcoat, but he observed with wonder the greatness of the relief that appeared upon the butler's face, and perhaps with no less that the wine was still untasted when he set it down to follow. It was a wild, cold, seasonable night of March. Well, that's like tonight. With a pale moon lying on her back as though the wind had tilted her, and a flying rack of the most diaphanous and lawny texture. The wind made talking difficult and flecked the blood into the face. It seemed to have swept the streets unusually bare of passengers besides, for Mr. Utterson thought he had never seen that part of London so deserted. He could have wished it otherwise. Never in his life had he been conscious of so sharp a wish to see and touch his fellow creatures. For struggle as he might, there was borne in upon his mind a crushing anticipation of calamity. The square, when they got there, was all full of wind and dust, and the thin trees in the garden were lashing themselves along the railing. Poole, who had kept all the way a pace or two ahead, now pulled up in the middle of the pavement, and in spite of the biting weather, took off his hat and mopped his brow with a red pocket handkerchief. But for all the hurry of his coming, these were not the dews of exertion that he wiped away, but the moisture of some strangling anguish. For his face was white, and his voice, when he spoke, harsh and broken. "Well, sir," he said, "here we are, and God grant there be nothing wrong." "Amen, Poole," said the lawyer. Thereupon the servant knocked in a very guarded manner. The door was opened on the chain, and a voice asked from within, "Is that you, Poole?" "It's all right," said Poole. "Open the door." The hall, when they entered it, was brightly lighted up. The fire was built high, and about the hearth the whole of the servants, men and women, stood huddled together like a flock of sheep. At the sight of Mr. Utterson, the housemaid broke into hysterical whimpering, and the cook, crying out, "Bless God, it's Mr. Utterson," ran forward as if to take him in her arms. What, are you all here?" said the lawyer peevishly. "Very irregular, very unseemly. Your master would be far from pleased." "They're all afraid," said Poole.
All right. I think
that's a tricky one.
I think that one is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Really?
Yeah. There's a lawyer.
A lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's all you need?
Did the synopsis? Well, you might be right because
And they're afraid of something.
they're all afraid.
Very
They could be afraid of Mr. Hyde, right?
Maybe there's been murders out on the street and
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know. What do you think? We're going to go with Dr. Jekyll?
well, did you have a different idea?
I couldn't put it
guess.
anywhere. I was going to say it must be another one of the Arabian Nights ones, but I don't know if we're going to have repeats here. Or, Well, let's. All right, I think you had an intuition there, Dr. Jekyll. Let's go with that. Strange Case of whatever it is, Dr. Jekyll.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Correct!
Yeah!
Yes!
All
Way to
right,
go,
I did
Sarah.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
I'm
We're
impressed.
2-1. Yeah, these are tough.
These
Should we do one more?
This is-
Maybe one more?
Sure, one more.
We'll just do one more.
This seems like a very unfair test, but I'm glad I'm not taking it. All right.
Here we go, last one.
Last one. Bidding my uncle sit where he was, I went to open it, and found on the doorstep a half-grown boy in sea clothes. He had no sooner seen me than he began to dance some steps of the sea hornpipe, which I had never before heard of, far less seen, snapping his fingers in the air and footing it right cleverly. For all that, he was blue with the cold, and there was something in his face, a look between tears and laughter that was highly pathetic and consisted ill with this gaiety of manner. "What cheer, mate?" says he, with a cracked voice. I asked him soberly to name his pleasure. "Oh, pleasure," says he, and then began to sing. "For it's my delight of a shiny night in the season of the year." "Well," said I, "if you have no business at all, I will even be so unmannerly as to shut you out." "Stay, brother," he cried. "Have you no fun about you, or do you want to get me thrashed? I've brought a letter from old Heasy-Osy to Mr. Bellflower." He showed me a letter as he spoke. "And I say, mate," he added, "I'm mortal hungry." The end.
Footing it quite cleverly.
It's got a kind of a nautical
saucy
theme.
It's very
lad.
jaunty.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe Treasure Island.
Another treasure island.
Yeah.
Sea clothes and everything.
Yeah, I think, I don't know about the...
I was initially thrown off by the uncle, but the uncle in the kidnapped one is a bad uncle, and this sounds like
A good uncle.
maybe like a fun uncle?
Yeah.
Funkle.
Yeah.
One of those bunkles.
you know, your fun uncle.
I don't know. What do you
I don't
think?
know.
Too much nautical.
Footing it
clothes and
quite
hornpipes.
cleverly.
I don't recognize any of the names. But
Mr. Bellflower.
Mr. Bellflower. I don't know. I'm leaning towards Treasure Island.
All right, we'll go with your gut.
Treasure Island again, David. What do you say?
Oh, kidnapped uncle! Ah, it's a tricky uncle,
Well,
not
maybe,
the fun
yeah.
uncle.
All right. Well,
I don't see what any of it has to do with any of these books.
yeah.
They're very long, and they have to fill them with something. So there's...
Well, I guess that wraps up our Robert Louis Stevenson quiz. Hope you guys at home did as better than we did. What were we?
Better.
Yeah, two and two, yeah.
You were
It's not too bad.
50%.
50%. Okay. And thank you, David, for those excellent renditions of the excerpts.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah, for getting the 1, 2 right. And I got the 2 wrong, I think. All right. We'll be right back here on the Two Cat Kitchen. Now it's time for one more number from A Child's Garden of Song, Volume 2. This is a setting of the poem Wintertime, sung by Sarah. It describes a child's experience in a wintry wonderland where everything is frosted like a wedding cake. It's wintertime, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
There lies the wintry sun abed, a frosty, fiery, sleepy head. Blinks but an hour or two, and then a blood red orange sets again. Before the stars have left the skies, at morning in the dark I rise, and shivering in my nakedness, by the cold candle bathe and dress. Close by the jolly fire I sit, to warm my frozen bones a bit. Oh, with the reindeer's sled explore the colder countries round the door. lies the wintry sun abed, a frosty, fiery, sleepy head. Blinks but an hour or two, and then a blood red orange sets again. Blinks but an hour or two, and then a blood red orange sets again.
That's all we have time for in this episode of the Two Cat Kitchen. We'd like to thank Sarah Grady
Hello, hello, goodbye.
and David Lucan.
Goodbye, hello.
Thank you for contributing to our Robert Louis Stevenson episode. And be sure to check out A Child's Garden of Song, Volume 2. We'll leave a link in the show notes for that. And we'll see you all next time right here on the
Two Cat Kitchen.
The culinary two-cat show.